Hey, hi, this is Gautam. I'm back. So in this video series, not only will I analyze and value PVR INOX, but also to the extent possible, I'll attempt to show as to how I go about analyzing and valuing this business. All right. So I'll attempt to show the process to the extent possible. All right. And uh, yeah, so and one thing more before we get started. Okay? So if in case you're interested in learning equity research, valuation, financial modeling, financial statement analysis, then please feel free to reach out to me. I've been mentoring, training people randomly, people who reach out to me. Okay? But I was thinking, if in case I have few people reaching out to me, I can perhaps club them together and start a cohort-based learning, if you will. All right. So perhaps just mentor or teach them all at once instead of helping people one by one. Okay? So it would be perhaps more productive use of my time and theirs as well. All right. So I'm open to that idea. So if in case, so yeah, so please, anyways, please reach out to me if you're interested in learning these topics. All right. Okay. All right. So, all right. And one thing more before we get started. So PVR and Inox is a very interesting business. All right. So so it just underwent a merger. So PVR and Inox, they merged last year. Okay? And this business has very high fixed costs. Okay? So it has very high operating leverage. We'll understand, how do you like analyze and value business which just underwent a merger and which has high fixed cost, which has high operating leverage. So we'll understand all these terms and so हम सब सीखेंगे वो सब और कैसे analyze और value करोगे इस business वो सब हम सीखेंगे अभी. All right. And third thing, very interesting again is that this business has very high operating leases as well. Okay. So again, that's some accounting that we'll have to deal with, but we'll navigate through that, and again we'll factor it in our valuation as well कि कैसे अगर एक business के बहुत high leases हैं, okay, तो वो leases होते क्या हैं at the first place, and then again how do you analyze and value such a business. All right. So the business is very interesting in that aspect. All right. All right. Okay. Now let me go ahead. All right. Let me splash my screen and move forward. All right. Okay, so I have the annual report of this company up. All right. So see, what I would be doing is I would be using an equity research framework. Okay. So I've already made a video on my equity research framework, which is, I know the word framework itself is fancy, but it's pretty simple. Okay. All that framework tells you is that what are the sequence of steps that you need to follow, okay, and what you need to do in all those steps to be able to analyze and then value a business. ठीक है, तो मैंने वो वीडियो बनाया है, अगर आपने वीडियो नहीं देखा that's fine. Okay, that's fine. I'll be walking you through that framework in this video. All right. Okay. ठीक है, तो let me perhaps flash that framework. Okay, very quickly. All right. So I have my business analysis framework sheet up. All right. See, to understand any business, all right, okay, you need to understand the industry, the market size, okay, what's the current market size and what's the future market size. Okay? And of course, you need to understand the business segments which make up that business, okay? The growth, how has the company grown historically and how do you think they would grow in the future based upon what the management is saying, and also based upon your own judgments. All right. And to estimate the growth, you of course need to have an idea about the market size. Ki, let's say abhi unka kuch market share hai, then what is the market share they could potentially acquire in the future? Then of course that is going to help you with your growth estimates for the future. Okay? And then what are the capital requirements to fund that growth? How they have funded growth historically and how they plan to fund growth in the future. So वो आपको चाहिए समझना. Okay? And then the cost of the margin at which this business operates and at which this business would operate in the future. Okay? So ये सारे pieces of information you definitely need to understand. Okay? Or evaluation, of course, you need, these are your ingredients of the ingredients to value any business as well at the bare minimum level. Okay? All right. So that is one. Okay? And the other thing is, it doesn't stop here. You also need to assess the moat in the business. Okay. All right. Ki competition kaisa hai? Okay? That's one thing. Okay? And how is the competition shaping up? Supplier power. Okay? Ki supply side kya chal raha hai? Again, we'll talk about this थोड़ी देर में. Buying power मतलब customers. Okay, let's say if you are supplying to a customer like Reliance, then and you are a small player, then of course Reliance would have the upper hand. Okay? तो आपको अपने customers का buyer power देखना है, right? Set of new entrants कि इस इंडस्ट्री में, इस बिजनेस में कोई और प्लेयर घुस रहा है कि नहीं, ओके, या कितना कि इजीली कोई घुस सकता है कि नहीं, राइट? सब्स्टिट्यूशन, यू ऑफ कोर्स यू डोंट वांट टू बिकम ऑब्सोलीट. तो so basically आपको whenever you are reading the investor presentation, the annual report या conference call या कोई भी external source, okay, तो आपको क्या करना है, जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन आप पढ़ रहे हो, तो आपको वो इंफॉर्मेशन समझनी है कि is that industry information, is this, are they talking about growth, are they talking about the capital, or are they talking about competition? तो मैं क्या करता हूँ, whenever I read through and I'll show you that when I read through any of these documents, okay, मैं क्लासिफाई करता हूँ इन माई माइंड और आई टेक नोट्स कि अच्छा राइट नाउ दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द इंडस्ट्री, सो आई पुल दैट इन्फॉर्मेशन, आई टैग दैट इन्फॉर्मेशन, लेट्स से इंडस्ट्री इन्फॉर्मेशन, ओके, ऑलराइट, एंड आई probably put some pointers here कि ठीक है, here they are talking about industry, here they are talking about the growth, okay, here they are talking about the market share or the competition. तो मैं इन्फॉर्मेशन उस हिसाब से टैग करके, क्लासिफाई करके यहाँ पे नोट कर लेता हूँ, ऑलराइट. And again, you may want to do this, you may not want to do this, that's fine. To me, this is helpful just to kind of structure the information across all these buckets, okay, and eventually to be able to make sense of them in a nutshell, as a whole. ठीक है, तो I find this useful. And again, अभी मैं बहुत जल्दी जल्दी सब बोल रहा हूँ, but I have made a detailed video on this, right? So if you want, you can watch that video. All right. Any which ways, the idea is, so I'm going to like go back and forth across the annual report, investor presentation, and conference calls. Okay. All right. And वो मैं बैक एंड फोर्थ करूंगा बिकॉज आई हैव मेड पॉइंटर्स, आई हैव मेड नोट्स हियर कि मुझे कौन सी इंफॉर्मेशन कहां से पुल करनी है, ऑलराइट, ओके. तो मैं ये फ्रेमवर्क, ये अपने नोट्स यूज करने वाला हूं, ऑलराइट, ओके, ऑलराइट. तो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड, लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द एनुअल रिपोर्ट फर्स्ट और इंडस्ट्री समझते हैं, ओके. और ये फ्रेमवर्क भी थोड़ा क्लियर होगा क्योंकि ये फ्रेमवर्क आपको बस बता रहा है कि क्या आपको देखना है और कहां देखना है और किस सीक्वेंस में देखना है. अगेन, क्या देखना है आपको, कॉलम सी, किस सीक्वेंस में देखना है और कहां देखना है. All right, so back to the annual report. Okay. So see, any annual report is structured in three buckets, if you will. Okay. So this first bucket, ये जो पहला वाला है, this talks about the business performance and the industry overview. Okay. Then second section, statutory reports. Within the statutory reports, ये जो management discussion and analysis, this again is important to understand the industry. Okay. Okay. And then third section is financial statements. Okay. So statutory reports or financial statements say you get a good idea about the management quality. Okay, which is something which we'll cover later. Okay, all right. So anyway, let's get started. Okay? So pehla, for any business, it's in any annual report, the first thing that's very important is read the message from the MD or the chairman. Okay, all right. So here, so see, in red I have marked, I have tagged जो भी मैंने फ्रेमवर्क में दिखाया था कि इंडस्ट्री की बात हो रही है, ग्रोथ की बात हो रही है, या बिजनेस किस चीज की बात हो रही है, वो मैंने यहाँ पे नोट्स बना लिए. ऑलराइट, ओके. सो हियर दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द इंडस्ट्री. सो दे गोइंग टू से द इंडियन बॉक्स ऑफिस हैज सरपास्ड द प्री पैंडेमिक लेवल्स इन टर्म्स ऑफ रेवेन्यू. ऑलराइट, तो अभी 12,000 सीआर का दे आर डूइंग रेवेन्यू इन 2023. सो दे हैव एक्चुअली सरपास्ड प्री कोविड लेवल के रेवेन्यू इंडियन बॉक्स ऑफिस. दैट्स की इन्फॉर्मेशन दे आर टेलिंग यू, ऑलराइट. और जब भी आप ये इन्फॉर्मेशन क्योंकि इंडस्ट्री की है, इंडियन बॉक्स ऑफिस की है, तो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन दैट कम्स टू योर माइंड इज ऑलराइट, ये तो इंडस्ट्री की बात होगी, पीवीआर ने कितना किया इसमें. सो अभी वो हम देखेंगे, ऑलराइट. सो अभी इंडस्ट्री, सो लेट्स कंटिन्यू विद इंडस्ट्री और सारे जो इंडस्ट्री के टैग्स हैं, लेट मी वॉक यू थ्रू इट. Morning progress. Alright, so if you scroll down, you would see message from the CFO as well. Okay. So यहाँ पे I've tagged again something which is industry specific soundbite. Okay. So if you see यहाँ पे, let me zoom थोड़ा सा. Okay. If you see India did around 1.5 billion okay, in box office collection. Okay. In the latest in 2023, 1.5, this is USD, billion dollars. Okay. All right. And China did 7.7. So India in this table or in this chart, India seems to be the only country जो सैंपल सेट लिया है जिसने अपना बॉक्स ऑफिस कलेक्शन इंक्रीज किया है, सरपास किया है इन कंपैरिजन विद इफ यू कंपेयर इट विद द प्री पैंडेमिक लेवल. ओके, राइट. ऑल द अदर कंट्रीज दे आर डूइंग, उनका बॉक्स ऑफिस कलेक्शन इज बिलो, दे स्टिल हैज नॉट रीच्ड द प्री पैंडेमिक लेवल्स. ऑलराइट, ओके. एंड और क्या आप इससे इंफॉर्मेशन से कर सकते हो, ऑलराइट. सी यहाँ पे ये 1.5 है ना, ये 1.5 बिलियन है ना, राइट. सो इफ यू डिवाइड दिस 1.5 बिलियन बॉक्स ऑफिस कलेक्शन with let's say 1.42 billion people that we have in India. So the per capita crude metric है, लेकिन per capita box office collection is close to 1.1 USD. Okay, all right. ये per capita हो गया, per capita box office in India. Okay, all right. ये China, this number is 7.7 billion USD. Okay, so same thing if you do for China. If you divide 7.7 with 1.4 billion people that they have, okay, so this would be close to around $5.5 per capita. Okay, so anyway, ये again crude metric है, तो per capita the box office collection है in China, okay, it is 5.5 और India में it's 1.1. Okay, so basically China का box office collection is 5x that of India. That's what this metric is telling us. Okay, all right. Now, and this is no surprise, right? The GDP itself of the per capita GDP of China is almost 5x. India may it's 2,500 USD per capita is GDP per capita. China may it's around 5x of that. So there is no surprise. But again, I'm just saying कि how you should, your mind should work when you look at these charts. So आपको ये numbers context में देखने कुछ. All right. All right. So now I flip over to the management discussion and analysis section, okay, which has a gold mine of data about the industry. ठीक है. All right. So यहाँ पे if you look at this chart, okay, यहाँ पे let me zoom थोड़ा सा. Okay. So if you see this chart, इसमें बोल रहा है कि जो developed worlds है US and Canada, okay, इनका box office was 9.1 billion, okay, and pre-pandemic 11.4 हो गया. Okay. All right. So in fact, if you see developed world के लिए in these two developed countries, okay, 9.5 से 9.1 से 11.4 का growth मतलब it's I would lower than GDP growth रहा है for the developed world. But if you look at the rest of the world, okay, all right, overall box office has actually grown pretty significantly. Okay, the rest of the world. All right, that's what this information is telling us. Now let's look further. All right, so यहाँ पे all right, but let's say if you look at India का box office collection, okay, pre-pandemic, if you see यहाँ पे, okay, this has, sorry about that, yeah, so this has grown at 7% GDP growth rate. Okay, so 8,300 CR था in 2025. From that, it has grown 2029 में for a period of 4 years, okay, has grown to almost 11,000 CR. Okay, all right. In fact, 2024 में now it's around 12,000 CR. Right. So what it's telling us is that India में growth has been more or less at the GDP growth rate, the box office का collection. Okay. All right. So on the interesting chart is number of screens per million population. Okay. So if you see India has 7. India has 7 screens per 10 lakh people. Okay? Vis-a-vis China, which has 58 screens per 10 lakh people. So which is around 8x that of India. Okay. All right. See, India looks underpenetrated in every industry. अगर इस type की metrics अगर हम देखें. Okay. All right. So anyway, but this is still, it tells you you know there are lesser number of screens. So as and when India में GDP growth होगा, थोड़ी prosperity आएगी, more and more segments would be lifted out of poverty. Okay? Then of course the number of screens will increase, and you know, so this certainly this industry again is underpenetrated if we were to look at this metric. Okay? All right. Now again, let's look at something very interesting. One more metric. Okay. Split of screens and multiplex screens in India. So if you see back in 2019, okay, यहाँ पे single screens बहुत ज्यादा थी. Okay, all right. Now over a period of time, single screens कम होती गई. Okay, and multiplex screens बढ़ती गई. Overall screens तब भी कम हो गई overall. You know, you see the capsule size of these capsules have gone down overall. Okay, लेकिन multiplex screens बढ़ी at the expense of single screens, because probably most of the single screens they went out of business. So there's a decline in single screens, okay, and multiplex screens. But then again, why they went out of business? Because see, this is a very heavy fixed cost business, right? You need to have economies of scale, the benefit of scale. वो हम touch करेंगे. We'll touch upon that. But this is a very interesting industry trend, okay, which of course forms the basis of my thesis as well. And I've used this in my as one of the metrics in my market share in my bottom-up revenue estimation for this company as well. Okay? All right. Anyway, let's move forward. यहाँ पे let's look at the regional split. Okay? So if you see South India में Still there are a lot of single screens. You see number of single screens in the south. Vis-a-vis, if you look at west, north, and east, all of the other regions, they have higher proportion of multiplex screens vis-a-vis single screens, but in south it's the opposite. Okay, all right. So that's why you would see when we talk about growth, अभी तो हम इंडस्ट्री की बात कर रहे हैं, जो हम ग्रोथ इस कंपनी के ग्रोथ इंडस्ट्री ग्रोथ की बात कर रहे हैं, जब इस कंपनी ग्रोथ प्रोस्पेक्ट्स की बात करेंगे, you would see this company PVR has plans to increase the number of screens they have in the southern region of India, because they think that of course this market in south is underpenetrated and a lot of single screens may go out of business, and so वो वहाँ पे they have plans to double down in the southern region. Okay, all right. Now another interesting chart. Okay? Here, if you look at the footfalls and the recovery, India may, this is in million. India may right now there are 94 CR. India में 94 CR people admits हैं, जो लोग टिकट खरीद के पिक्चर देख रहे हैं. 94 CR. This is 94.3 CR. This is still lower than pre-pandemic, which was pre-pandemic 103 CR लोग देख रहे थे. अब अभी भी although revenue के terms में ज्यादा हो गया, लेकिन in terms of number of people going to the theater and watching movies still अभी कम है, 94.3 CR है. Okay, right? And similar trend that you see in all other the geographies that you see in this samples in this chart. USA, Canada, it's of course less. China, it's less. Korea, it's less. Japan, it's less. ठीक है, all right. See, तो और ये चार्ट क्या हमें बता रहा है? See, 94 CR people in India, they go to a theater and watch movie. उसमें से PVR का एक मेट्रिक जो भी मैंने दिखाया नहीं है, वो है इस रिपोर्ट में. अभी राइट नाउ फॉर PVR 15 करोड़ लोग, 15 CR लोग PVR में जाकर मूवी देख रहे हैं. तो PVR का फुटफॉल मार्केट शेयर इज 15 डिवाइड बाय 94.3 is 16%. Okay, in terms of people, लोगों का मार्केट शेयर, फुटफॉल मार्केट शेयर. Okay, right. So let's look at another interesting chart. Okay, and then we'll be very close to concluding this industry section. Okay, so if you look at the per capita consumption gap between India and the Chinese, okay, so यहाँ पे अगर आप देखो in the hotel, catering and the leisure category, the Chinese are actually spending 20x that of India. अभी हमने देखा कि बॉक्स ऑफिस रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन था per capita was $5.5 for the Chinese and it was $1.1 for India. So it was 5x. But overall, अगर आप hotel, catering, leisure category देखो, तो Chinese right now are spending 20x than India on a per capita basis, although their per capita GDP is only 5x that of India. ठीक है, all right. So basically it shows you कि जैसे जैसे GDP बढ़ेगा इंडिया का, वैसे वैसे the spending propensity of people will increase, so they'll be more open to spending on ये discretionary, ये और consumption में. ठीक है, all right. That's what this is telling us. And same story with Brazil as well, okay? Which is again is a developing economy. Okay? So even अगर ब्राजील में देखो तो they are spending around 15 to 25x, okay, per capita consumption vis-a-vis that of India. ठीक है, all right. So see, मोटा ये सब चीजें हमें यही बता रही हैं कि this market is under penetrated, और consumption इस category में penetration आगे बढ़ेगा. Okay? But all right, now how do we make use of what we saw, okay, or what we in all these charts that we saw, okay? How do we make use of this, okay, and estimate the potential market size of this movie exhibition industry 5 years out? That's the problem statement now that we need to solve. All right, see, to estimate the size of the Indian box office, okay, 5 years out, I've gone back to this chart, okay, keeping things very simple. See, back in 2015, India का box office was 8,300 CR. ठीक है, उस समय GDP था around 117. I've noted these numbers ahead of time. India का GDP उस समय था, and World Bank की वेबसाइट पे वो इंडिया का historical GDP मिल जाएगा. Okay? This is where I have kind of sourced the information from. 170 lakh CR इंडिया का GDP था. lakh CR. तो बॉक्स ऑफिस डिवाइडेड बाय GDP अगर करेंगे तो आएगा 0.048%. सो दिस इज बॉक्स ऑफिस एज अ पोर्शन ऑफ GDP. ये जो मेट्रिक है बॉक्स ऑफिस एज अ पोर्शन ऑफ GDP इज 0.048%. 5 साल आगे चलते हैं, कट टू 2019, सिंस box office has grown at more or less at the GDP rate. So this ratio, if you compute this ratio, this would be the same. उस समय हियर जीडीपी हो गया 2019 में 230 सीआर, 230 लाख सीआर, सॉरी. Again, if you divide this box office revenue by GDP, okay, you would again get the same metric. Box office as a portion of GDP was the same 0.048 or around the same number. Okay, all right. And this box office as a portion of GDP in 2014 में ये हो गया है, this has fallen to 0.037%. Okay, why it has fallen? There are two reasons. One is because it's believed that the key box office revenues, they have not, although they have surpassed pre-pandemic levels, okay, but still जैसा growth होना चाहिए था वैसा नहीं हुआ है, okay, because footfall अभी वैसा नहीं हुआ है. And the other reason is because certainly there has been some movement away to OTT, okay, because a lot of people think कि चलो कुछ टाइम रुक जाते हैं, when this movie will, let's say, hit Netflix or Amazon Prime or Z5 or what have you, then we'll watch it at our convenience instead of going out to the theater. So certainly some of that is happening as well. That's why there's a dip in box office as a portion of GDP. So any which ways, let's assume कि 5 साल भी ये metric almost इतना ही रहेगा 5 years out. Okay? So in 2019 में फिर क्या होगा? GDP अगर कितना है अपना, GDP 2019 में कितना हो जाएगा? अराउंड $6 ट्रिलियन US डॉलर्स, या फिर अराउंड इंडियन रुपीज में 5 लाख CR. ठीक है, ऑलराइट. सो सिंस जीडीपी सिंस बॉक्स ऑफिस एज अ पोर्शन जीडीपी, लेट्स अज्यूम कि वो रहेगा और वो सेम 0.036 पे. ठीक है, ऑलराइट. तो आपका बॉक्स ऑफिस कलेक्शन कितना हो जाएगा 5 years out? इट वुड बी around just shade under 19,000, should be around 18,800 CR. Okay, so the box office from 12,000 CR today will grow to around 19,000 CR in 5 years, as per this crude top-down assumption, which is a growth of around 9% over the next 5 years. Okay, this is what essentially what we are saying. Okay. Right. So now I flipped over to their investor presentation from FY24 Q4. Okay? So you'd be thinking कि again मैंने flip किया, flip flop. See because again I have tagged this chart as an industry soundbite, और मैंने अपने notes में बना के रखा है, लिख के रखा है कि this is something that is important कि when I cover industry. Okay? So when you analyze, आपको ideally भी आपको tag कर लेना चाहिए अपने mind में या कहीं notes में कि अच्छा this is relevant stuff for the industry. So when you are analyzing stuff as a whole, okay, after going through so much of documentation, तब आप you can put everything together. Okay, तो इसलिए tagging कि कौन सा सेक्शन के बारे में बात हो रहा है, इंडस्ट्री के बारे में बात हो रही है, कंपनी स्पेसिफिक कोई मेट्रिक के बारे में बात हो रही है, जो भी है, तो टैगिंग हेल्प्स दैट वे. एनी व्हिच वेज, कट टू दिस. तो ये इंडस्ट्री, सो इफ यू लुक एट दिस चार्ट, अभी बॉक्स ऑफिस का जैसे मैं बता रहा था कि और it's not it's almost 12,000 CR. This is in million, so this is 12,000 CR बॉक्स ऑफिस का कलेक्शन. ऑलराइट, और ये 2024 की बात है, और FY24 में पीवीआर ने करीब 3,916 CR का बॉक्स ऑफिस कलेक्शन खुद किया है. ये तो मार्केट शेयर कितना हो गया इनका? हो गया मार्केट शेयर, इफ यू डिवाइड 3,916 by 12,000, इट वुड बी क्लोज टू अराउंड 32% का मार्केट शेयर पीवीआर का in terms of बॉक्स ऑफिस कलेक्शन. तो बॉक्स ऑफिस का कलेक्शन जो है पीवीआर का, आइनॉक्स का, दिस इज मार्केट शेयर बॉक्स ऑफिस का. और हमने देखा था फुटफॉल का, सॉरी हमने फुटफॉल का मार्केट शेयर आई गेस देखा था. वन सेकेंड, तो आई जस्ट चेक्ड. तो व्हाट वी सॉ कि फुटफॉल, जो एडमिट्स का, जो लोग टिकट खरीद के मूवी देख रहे हैं, उनका मार्केट शेयर पीवीआर के पास है, दैट इज 16%. Those 16% are actually driving a 32 market share in terms of PVR box office का collection. ठीक है, all right. So PVR has the highest market share in the industry, both in terms of box office collection, in terms of footfall both. Although केवल 16% लोग जा रहे हैं इनके पास, ठीक है, लेकिन वो 32%, 32% का वो इनको बॉक्स ऑफिस का कलेक्शन दे रहे हैं. Okay, all right. So अगर हम assume करें, we just estimated कि what would be the इंडिया का बॉक्स ऑफिस का साइज इन 5 years. ऑलराइट, सो वी लुक्ड एट कि 2029 में जो बॉक्स ऑफिस होगा वो हो जाएगा, इंडस्ट्री बॉस हो जाएगा 18,800 CR. ऑलराइट, लेट्स से पीवीआर का मार्केट शेयर इन 2019 32% से 35% हो जाता है. व्हाई आई एम अज्यूमिंग अ हायर मार्केट शेयर? बिकॉज I believe, this is my assumption based upon what I have seen, is my judgment, there would be further consolidation. A lot of single screens down south and elsewhere would close operations. Okay, right? And PVR is going to open more like screens in southern region and elsewhere. Okay, और अभी हम वो सब देखेंगे भी थोड़ा. तो एनी विच वेज 35% अगर मार्केट शेयर हो जाता है इस इन रीजन की वजह से, तो 35% ऑफ दिस इज अराउंड, so this is around 6,600 CR. तो PVR, PVR from 3,900 CR, वो जो collection कर लेगा in 5 years would be 6,600. That is a high level revenue potential, top down revenue potential of PVR from 3,916 ये collection today to 6,600 5 years out. This is a top down estimate. ठीक है, ये हम बॉटम अप भी करेंगे. ठीक है, all right. See, now we are done with the industry and market size estimation section. ठीक है, all right. We flipped across annual report investor presentations. अब हमने ये कर लिया है, इंडस्ट्री भी देख ली है और मार्केट साइज भी हमने एस्टिमेट कर लिया है टॉप डाउन तरीके से. और नॉट ओनली मार्केट साइज, पीवीआर कितना खुद टॉप रेवेन्यू कर सकता है फ्रॉम अ हाई लेवल, फ्रॉम अ टॉप डाउन पर्सपेक्टिव. ऑलराइट, नाउ लेट्स लुक एट, सो इसको दूसरे कलर में कर देते हैं, ये हो गया है, जस्ट सो दैट वी कीप ट्रैक. इसको लेट मी जस्ट डू दिस शेड. नाउ लेट्स लुक, आई हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड बिजनेस इवेंट. बिजनेस इवेंट क्या हुआ था? इनका मर्जर हुआ था, पीवीआर मर्ज विद INOX. ठीक है, ऑलराइट. सो लेट्स टेक अ लुक एट दैट. लेट्स गो टू इन्वेस्टर प्रेजेंटेशन. ओके, all right. So PVR and INOX, they merged last year in 2023. Okay, all right. So if you see now, totally they have around 1,700 screens. Okay, all right. And of course, they have the highest market share, okay, in many regions in India. Okay, all right. और प्रो फॉर्मा अगर उनके एडमिट्स देखें 2013, प्रो फॉर्मा मतलब यू काइंड ऑफ कंबाइन, ऑल्दो दे वर वर्किंग एज डिफरेंट कंपनीज, बट प्रो फॉर्मा में, प्रो फॉर्मा नंबर्स का मतलब यू अज्यूम की दे आर ऑपरेटिंग, उनके नंबर्स आप कंबाइन करके देखो. सो प्रो फॉर्मा दे हैड 14 CR, 140 मिलियन का मतलब 14 CR, 14 CR पीपल कमिंग इन देयर थिएटर्स एंड बाइंग टिकट्स. ठीक है, तो 14 CR लोगों को ने मूवी देखा इनके कंबाइन पीवीआर और आइनॉक्स में. राइट, राइट. तो ये हमें बता रहा है. राइट, नाउ एक, see whenever you come across any merger scenario, okay, you always should have two questions. One is, okay, what is the purpose of the merger? Purpose of the merger. Okay. Second is, what is the purchase price? Purchase price क्या है? Okay. So let's try to get answers to both these two questions. ठीक है, और ये सवाल आपके पास हमेशा होना चाहिए जब भी आप मर्जर देखो. ठीक है, तो अभी इन दोनों के लेट्स ट्राई टू गेट द आंसर्स ऑफ दीस टू, फाइंड आउट कि क्या पर्पस है, व्हाट इज द परचेज प्राइस. ऑलराइट, ऑलराइट. सी द मर्जर was of INOX in the books of PVR. Okay? And if you see here, PVR paid around 6,297 CR to INOX. Okay? This is what they paid. Okay? But the fair value of the assets of INOX was only 1,663 CR. Okay? All right, that means they overpaid above the fair value. And the overpayment, okay, in finance is called goodwill. तो कितना ओवरपेमेंट हो गया? अराउंड 4,634 CR. Okay, so typically all the mergers and acquisitions, okay, they happen at a premium, at a goodwill, above the fair value. There is an overpayment component that's involved. Okay, all right. But why do you think इन्होंने they paid more than twice of the fair value? This is more than twice. In fact, almost 3 गुना या 3 गुना से थोड़ा कम of fair value goodwill. amount is almost thrice of the fair value. Okay. See, for that we have to understand the purpose or the objective behind the merger. Okay. Usually there could be three objectives. One is, now I'm going through a word, okay, which I'm going to explain. Okay. Usually there are three objectives, और एक भी हो सकता है कुछ भी, मतलब लेकिन इनमें से कुछ भी हो सकता है, या तो ग्रोथ सिनर्जी, सिनर्जी, कॉस्ट सिनर्जी या कंट्रोल. ऑलराइट, अब पहले समझते हैं कि सिनर्जी का मतलब क्या है. What is synergy at the end of the day? See, when two companies, and synergy is a very abused word. Okay? When two companies or two entities decide to come together, okay, they believe that together they can create more value than they could have if they stay separate. Okay? That is what synergy means. Okay? Right? So someone used to give this example that when like male and female, they coming together, let's say they give birth to a life. Okay? So that is an example of synergy, because of course they could not do it alone. You know, they cannot do it separately on their own. All right. तो क्या है कि synergy में another example is 2 plus 2 is not equal to 4, 2 plus 2 is equals 5. ये तो जो incremental 1, जो delta 1 का मिला, that is because of synergy. ठीक है. All right. तो इन्होंने ये perhaps they believe कि coming together they would create synergist values in synergy which would perhaps either equal to or exceed the value of this goodwill. ठीक है. ऑलराइट, तो अभी हम देखेंगे और कि क्या पर्पस है, लेकिन मैं आपको एक पर्सपेक्टिव दे रहा हूं कि सिनर्जी का मतलब क्या होता है और वो पेमेंट गुडविल जनरली आप इंटरप्रेट कैसे करो. ओके. ऑलराइट. ऑलराइट. And one thing also important to note that this goodwill, okay, is tested for impairment every year or periodically. What it means is कि आप टेस्ट करोगे कि ये जो acquired assets हैं, इनका जो valuation है, okay, क्या ये गिर गया है. If let's say it falls, okay, below the price at which acquisition हुआ है, okay, in this case the acquisition is at 6,300, okay, right? So अगर the fair value every year it's tested, अगर fair value 6,300 से गिर गया है, then this goodwill is impaired. मतलब गुडविल की वैल्यू डिमिनिश कर दी जाती है बुक्स में. Giving you some extra, but just for now, just understand that goodwill is tested for impairment every year. If the fair value of the acquired assets falls below the price at which they were acquired, then the value of goodwill needs to be impaired or diminished in the books of PVR. Okay? Yeah. All right. Let's move forward and try to understand the purpose or the objectives behind the merger. Okay? All right. Okay. Now, see, one of the reasons behind the merger is cost synergy. Yeah. So if you see total headcount in FY20 was around 24,000 people that both of these two organizations employed together, but that fell to 21,000 in FY24. So there is a reduction of around 3,000 people. Okay. So what it means is now, of course, resources, people could be used in both, right? You don't need to not every time, but you don't need to have to hire, let's say someone in the management separately for PVR and INOX. That person could perhaps deal with both, right? So of course there are synergies, right? Similarly, agar let's say there's a software, you purchase a software. Now pehle PVR and INOX would purchase, let's say, different software systems. Okay, all right. वो एक अलग license cost दे रहा है, उसके वो अलग license cost दे रहा है. Now क्यों देना है वैसा? Same software purchase करके दोनों use कर लो. So there is the cost savings from that angle as well, okay, which they talk about as well. ठीक है? So there is certainly cost synergy was one of the objective behind the merger. Okay? The another was growth synergy. Okay? Growth synergy. Okay? Okay? तो यहाँ पे क्या कह रहे हैं वो कि let's say they grew their ATP, मतलब average ticket prices, okay? जो average ticket price है पिक्चर देखने का, that grew by 9.5%. Okay? Now what they're saying is if they had, let's say, not and take this with a pinch of salt. Okay, what they're saying is, let's say, had they not, merged, then the organic growth would have been like 4%. So the incremental 5.5 to 6% is because of the merger. Okay, all right. Okay, so इस वजह से, there is certainly some growth synergies as well. Okay, all right. See, it could be true as well, right? Because now they control a larger portion of the market, right? So they, of course, they can command a higher price. Okay, because इनको पता है कि हमारे ही इतने सारे थिएटर्स हैं, लोग हमारे पास ही आएंगे क्योंकि इनका इतना हाई मार्केट शेयर है, you know. So people would be made to pay, so they have certain pricing power from that angle, okay, because of course they have a higher market share now than what they had earlier. Okay, so by that logic, yes, there is certainly some growth synergies which is playing out because now they can command higher prices than what they could have before the merger. Okay, all right. तो एक तो कॉस्ट सिनर्जी हो गई, ग्रोथ सिनर्जी हो गई, तीसरी चीज हो गई कंट्रोल. थर्ड थिंग इज कंट्रोल बिकॉज एज आई सेड नाउ दे कंट्रोल अ लार्जर पोर्शन ऑफ द मार्केट. सो थोड़ा ओलिगोपोली ओलिगोपोलिस्टिक नेचर हो गया बिजनेस का, क्योंकि बहुत सारे प्लेयर्स सिंगल स्क्रीन शटिंग डाउन and of course they are the largest player, so they are kind of controlling the market in that sense. तो ये तीसरा रीजन हो गया, right? So there are three purposes behind the merger. All right. All right. See, so we are done with the business event section as well. So let's just mark it as done. Okay. Okay. Now let's move to the business segment section. Okay. So here we look at segments which make up this business, or rather we look at the business metrics that make up each of the business segments: movie exhibition, food and beverage, and the ad revenue. Okay. So let's look at that. And in this, my notebook or my framework tells me we need to go to the annual report. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. Let's go to annual report. So annual report may let's go. All right. So in the annual report section, okay, one business metric or which I've highlighted is key. They are saying the occupancy at which they're operating is around 25-26%, but which is lower than the pre-pandemic level of 32%. Okay. So matlab, because they're not getting that all the revenue, box office revenue zyada hai, lekin they're not getting that amount of footfall yet. Okay, and this is important. This occupancy is important, and you will see that I will use this metric when we estimate the bottom up revenue, when we estimate revenue bottom up for this particular company. ठीक है, अभी तो हमने top down किया, अभी bottom up भी करेंगे, and we'll use this metric. So this is important. All right. Now let's look at some other metrics that I've highlighted. Okay? Business metrics that making up each of the segments. Okay? So again, talking about the movie exhibition business. So here they're talking about exhibition, which is like 15.1 CR admissions. Okay, 21 million, मतलब 15.1 CR admissions, and each of them at a ticket price of 259. ठीक है, तो अगर हम 15.1 CR times 259, which is the price of each ticket करें, so it would be close to 3915 CR, which is what we saw. We just saw this number when we were estimating the market share of the PVR INOX का market share in box office. ठीक है, collection. ठीक है, so this is like straightforward कि कितने टिकट बिक रहे हैं और at what price. ठीक है, all right. Now second is food and beverage. Okay? Now food and beverage, the spend per head is 132. All right, this is like straightforward. Like each of these 15 CR people will buy, on an average, each of them will buy food and beverage worth of 132 rupees. Okay, so again, if you multiply 115.1 CR with 132, you will get the revenue for food and beverage. Okay, all right. So it's like pretty straightforward. Okay, and one thing I just wanted to let you know, I should have. You see, 15.1 CR times 259 करो, तो you get this 3,900 number. This is the box office collection. Okay? लेकिन जो movie exhibition revenue है, जो report करेंगे, this would be slightly lower than this number. I tell you why. Because a portion of this collection, around 15%, okay, this I got to know only later. A portion of this would go to, let's say, the producers, what have you. Okay, so they would be left with only, let's say, 3,300 something or 200 something. Okay, so that is what they would report for movie exhibition. ठीक है, लेकिन food and beverage में they don't like give a cut. It's just ticket price times the spend per head. ठीक है, all right. So this is important. And now the third segment is ad revenue. ठीक है, तो ad revenue, what they're saying is, if you read this blog, they're saying absolute ad revenue increased by 18%. Okay, while it is still below pre-pandemic levels, they're saying while it is still below pre-pandemic levels, we expect the momentum to sustain going forward. ठीक है, तो अभी भी you see, because COVID के समय में a lot of ad they would have pulled out. ठीक है, now they are seeing traction, people going to the theater and watching movies, so the ad revenue may again pick momentum going forward. ठीक है, तो अभी तो थोड़ा धीरे धीरे वो बढ़ रहा है. Okay, and this is of course would be a high margin segment. ठीक है. Let's quickly look at the scan through a couple of more metrics, and then let's estimate the potential revenue of this company 5 years out using bottom up method. ठीक है, तो यहाँ बोल रहे 361 cinemas हैं, इतने screens हैं 1700 something, इतने seats हैं 361,000 screens across these many cities and towns. ठीक है, All right. So let's get to our estimation. Okay, let me open up a whiteboard. All right. Let's quickly estimate the bottom up revenue based on what we know. We've already done the top down estimate. All right. See, we just saw how many seats they have per screen. Okay. Well, totally they have 361,000 seats. Okay. Now, if we divide it by the number of screens, which is 750 right now, okay, then that means they have what, 206 seats on an average per screen. ठीक है, ये अभी का है. ठीक है. All right. Okay. तो अगर हम क्या करें, so this is one data point. All right. So let's say, see, they have 206 seats per screen. Okay. All right. And okay, every day, let's say they have 5 shows, and it's around that number. Okay, you can back calculate it based upon what we know, but it's around 5 shows per day per screen. Okay. All right. And of course, they would not operate at 100% occupancy right now. They're operating at what, 25% occupancy. Let's say 5 years out, they'll 5 years out, they'll, let's say, operate at 28%. See, pre-COVID, they were operating at 32% occupancy. So 25 or 32 ka middle le lete hain, which is around 28%. Okay. So 28% occupancy. Okay. All right. इतने सीट्स पर स्क्रीन हो गए, 5 शोज हो गए, इतने ऑक्यूपेंसी पे. ऑल राइट. टोटल कितने स्क्रीन्स हैं अभी? दे आर 750 स्क्रीन्स राइट नाउ. 5 साल में कितने स्क्रीन हो सकते हैं? बाय 2029. सी, लास्ट ईयर दे एडेड 50 नेट न्यू स्क्रीन्स, मोटा मोटा. This year, FY25, they again plan to add 50 net new screens. So, if they grow at this rate, in 5 years, that is by 2029, they'll have around 2,000 screens. Okay, so 2029 में, यानी 5 साल बाद, 5 साल में, they'll have what, 2,000 screens. ठीक है, all right. ये हो गया. और just one second. All right. तो ये पर डे का हो गया. All right. और हर टिकट, हर सीट कितने पे बिकेगी 5 साल बाद? राइट नाउ इट्स सेलिंग एट 259 पर टिकट. लेट्स से 5 इयर्स में 300 रुपीज पर टिकट. और ये पूरे दिन, एक दिन का है. दिस इज फॉर 1 डे मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 365. ऑफ कोर्स देयर विल बी अ फ्यू हॉलीडेज. लेकिन मोटा मोटा रखते हैं. तो अगर हम ये 5 साल में अगर आप इसे मल्टीप्लाई करो, सो दिस वुड बी अराउंड 6,500 CR box office collection for PVR INOX. Okay. All right. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. And see, if you recall, this is in a shouting distance. This is very close to the box office revenue estimate that we had done for this company using the top-down method. Okay, तो top-down में भी 6,500, 6,600 था, और यहाँ पे भी 6,500 है. Okay, all right. So we have been able to triangulate our revenue estimates both using top-down and bottom-up estimates. Of course, we have taken assumptions. Without assumptions, you cannot do any kind of projections at all. So long as you can back your projections, you're good, you're fine. Okay. Also, box office का हो गया revenue, and similarly, you can estimate for, let's say, food and beverage as well, like straightforward. Okay. See, कितने admits कितने हैं? If you are, let's say, doing 6,500 revenue from box office, okay, then and you divide it by the number of by average price per ticket, which is 300 rupees as per our assumption. So then this is around 21, 22 CR admits, your footfall. ठीक है, all right. तो right now in 2024 कितने एडमिट्स हैं आपके? आपके एडमिट्स हैं 15 CR. 2029 में हम बोल रहे हैं कि 21 CR एडमिट्स हो जाएंगे आपके. ऑलराइट. ये तो ये हो गया, ये एडमिट्स हो गया. फूड एंड बेवरेज में अभी एवरेज रेवेन्यू पर पर्सन और स्पेंड पर हेड इज अराउंड 132 रुपीज पर एडमिट. राइट. लेट्स से इन्फ्लेशन की वजह से इट इंक्रीजेस टू 160 over 5 years, okay, per admit. So if you multiply both these two numbers, 21 CR times 160 CR, okay, तो आपको मिलेगा around 3,300 CR something. 21 multiplied by 160, yeah, 3,360 CR something. Okay, all right. तो मोटा मोटा so 6,500 यहाँ से हो गया and plus 3,300, तो almost like close to 10,000 CR revenue तो food and beverage और box office से ही हो गया. Okay? So yeah, so this ये तो food and beverage का ये है F&B revenue. Okay? All right. और आपका उसका जो था बॉक्स ऑफिस का मूवी एग्जीबिशन का था 6,500. नाउ इसका जो है ना, इसका यू कांट टेक द इंटायर रेवेन्यू, ओके, बिकॉज स्मॉल पोर्शन ऑफ इट गोज टू प्रोड्यूसर्स, ऑलराइट. तो इसका थोड़ा सा आप लोगे, बट देन यू नो राइट नाउ व्हाट्स हैपनिंग, 15% ऑफ इट्स गोइंग टू प्रोड्यूसर्स. आप उसका सिर्फ 85% इनको मिल रहा है. Yeah, so any which ways you add both these two together, it would be little less than 10,000, 9,000 something. Okay. So anyway, आप तरीका समझो कैसे किया है. All right. So, or plus then there is a third segment, advertising. That you could right now it's a certain percentage of the overall revenue. So you can assume कि it would more or less be the same, or may grow slightly in the future. So anyway, इस तरीके से मोटा मोटा मैंने revenue projections किया है over the next 5 years. Okay. And of course, I'll share my sheet if you need it. Okay. All right. Okay. Now let's move forward. Let's go back to our spreadsheet. All right. So we are done with the business segment as well. We've marked it completed. Now let's talk about some of the other things like growth. Okay. All right. Growth. What is the company saying about growth? What they're saying about how they intend to fund that growth, and about cost. ठीक है. तो ये सब चीजें let's just quickly glance through. All right. So growth, I have a few things marked in the annual report and also in the conference call transcripts. So let's start with the annual report first. Okay. All right. So here, if you see, okay, in the यहाँ पे I've marked this in the growth section of business expansion. What they're saying is essentially that there'll be closure of underperforming screens. Okay? They opened like 130 new screens across 25 cinemas, but they closed down 85 underperforming ones. So net they added around 45 new screens. That's what they're saying. Yeah, and this is very actually true to any retailer. Okay? Any retailer assesses what are the underperforming stores and they close them down. Okay, that's what they are doing as well. Okay, and also they are saying that they have been penetrating under served markets. For example, they are saying Patna in Bihar, Dharwad in Karnataka, Kadalur in Tamil Nadu. So all of these cities they have expanded into. Okay, so that's what they are saying. All right, and then again, they go on to say that we estimate that approximately 40% of our stores will open in southern part of India. Okay, so they are actually increasingly focused in the southern region, because as we saw during the industry section analysis, that in the southern region, there is a high proportion of single screens vis-a-vis multiplexes, and because the economies of this business would favor scale, मतलब जो जिसके पास scale ज़्यादा है, that entity does well. So single screen may go out of business, and they have been going out of business. All right. So South में that's why they are pouring into. So they are double dipping in downing on the southern region. ठीक है. All right. In fact, if you look at this investor presentation, this slide, okay, the latest investor presentation, we see for Hindi movies, okay, यहाँ पे they are saying, if you look at all these numbers, okay, the PVR INOX का box office collection vis-a-vis total box office collection for that movie. So if you see all these for these Hindi movies, it's around 50% market share in box office. Munjaya, Kalki, Kriyu, Chandu, Champion, what have you, 50% market share है, मोटा मोटा. Okay? For English movies also, it's more than 50% for English movies. बॉक्स ऑफिस में मार्केट शेयर. लेकिन रीजनल जो है, रीजनल मूवीज, दिस तेलुगु मूवी काल्की, महाराजा तमिल मूवी, all these movies you see, the share is much less than 50%. Look at the share, it's not even 25%. Okay? That is because there are a lot of single screens down south. Okay? So इसलिए वो, again, all the more reason, that's why they are focusing on the southern region. Okay? All right. Okay, and plus in the southern region, I've lived in Chennai for 5 years. I love the city, by the way. So there is a strong culture of movies down in Chennai. Okay. So any which ways. Okay. All right. So now let's move forward. All right. So I'm back to the annual report. तो यहाँ पे again I have tagged something as growth. इसलिए मैं सारे growth वाले sections अभी cover कर रहा हूँ based upon the framework that I use. ठीक है. तो So growth में they see they what they're saying is they entered into a partnership with Devyani International. Okay, so so they're foraying into pre-ticketed F&B revenue. Okay, all right, and they have given in the on calls earning call transcript, they have actually given plenty of reasons as to why they think this move makes sense for them. Okay, so वहाँ पे let's now go to the con call as well. I know I'm kind of flipping across uh, different documents, but that's what you need to do when you are analyzing a company. Okay, आप सारे documents देख लो, mark करते जाओ ये section में इसकी चीज की बात कर रहे हैं, and then of course you got to look at them together. Okay, so ये hard work तो करना होगा. Okay, now let me go to the earnings call transcript and just show you as to what is the reason they are giving behind this partnership with Devyani International. ठीक है. All right, so I flipped over to the earnings call transcript from FY24 Q4. So उसमें see here they're talking about, I've summarized the reason as to why they think this partnership makes strategic sense to them. Okay? So यहाँ पे if you see, and we felt this partnership is a win-win because we get to have some F&B revenues which are pre-ticketed. Okay, मतलब you don't have to buy a ticket to basically otherwise क्या ticket खरीदो उसके बाद अंदर जो कोक पेप्सी जो भी पॉपकॉर्न खरीदो, तो यू डोंट हैव टू बाय अ टिकट. लेकिन तो इस पार्टनरशिप से तो अगेन जो आप कुछ खरीदते हो फूड कोर्ट में, सो इट्स नाउ दे हैव दिस पार्टनरशिप, सो पोर्शन ऑफ दैट रेवेन्यू विल गो टू देम एज वेल. ठीक है. So and we were able to get the opportunity to come up with some branded food courts. So most of the mall operators currently don't have branded food courts, and we believe that we can add value there and also get and 15 CR people that come to our cinemas, so they'll get more wallet share of those customers. ठीक है. So that's what they're saying. Right, because not all the people who come to let's say watch a movie, not all will let's say buy the popcorn or buy that Coke Pepsi. They'll probably eat in the food court, so they'll get a share of their wallet, okay, as well in food. If they don't spend inside the PVR itself, but outside also, they'll get a portion. ठीक है, तो ये बोल रहे हैं, तो यहाँ पे और प्लस क्रॉस प्रमोशन होगा, what have you. All right, and and what's the benefit to Devyani International? The benefit to them is, see, PVR actually has been very good at negotiating good rental deals with the mall operators, with the developers. ठीक है. So that's the benefit that Devyani will get as both in the existing malls where these guys have presence, plus in new malls where they plan to foray into, दोनों जगह पे, both existing plus new. Okay, this partnership is going to benefit Devyani. Okay, because these guys are called negotiators. Okay, they know how to negotiate because they have the scale benefit. Okay, all right, so that's what they are essentially saying. तो उससे भी अगेन, सो इससे भी बेसिकली बता रहा है कि देयर इज सर्टेनली एन ऑप्शनैलिटी, ग्रोथ ऑफ ऑप्शनैलिटी थ्रू दिस पार्टनरशिप. ओके, one more thing before we move on to the next section. Okay? One key risk actually, okay? I should have covered it when I was actually covering the box office share that these guys have in South Indian movies and Hindi movies and in English movies. I should have covered it. Okay, but I just saw my notes that and I came here. Okay, see different language movies in India, they have different theatrical windows, theater windows, if you will. Okay, theatrical window is nothing but the time between when a movie, let's say, is released, okay, and when it appears in OTT. Okay, तो वो window को बोलते हैं theatrical window. Okay, so for Bollywood movies, for Hindi movies, that window, and Punjabi movies, that window is 8 weeks. Okay, but for South Indian movies or Tamil Telugu movies or perhaps even Malayalam movies, okay, that window is only 4 weeks. Okay, and these guys are trying to just make sure, just trying hard to even the producers, a lot of producers in India, movie producers, they are also trying कि there should be an alignment in terms of कि same window हो regardless of the कि regional movie है, कि Hindi movie है, English movie है, they should have the same window, that is 8 weeks or higher, whatever. ठीक है, all right. तो ये यहाँ पे ये लेकिन एक definitely एक risk है कि let's say these window they get shorter, okay, then of course that's a risk, right? Because people, again, a lot of it's happening already, a lot of people just wait for the movie to hit OTT. Okay, and so if this window gets shorter, then of course it will be detrimental to a company like PVR INOX. Okay, okay. Right. So we've covered the growth section as well. Now let's move really quickly to the capital requirement and the margin section. Okay. All right. So let me in fact go to the con call, earnings call transcript. Okay. what they're saying is they're trying to pivot to a capital light model. Okay, earlier what they used to do is, until now what they used to do is they put all the capital up front. To open a new screen, ये पूरा capital पैसा खुद डालते हैं. अभी क्या कर रहे हैं for any new screen addition? So they are trying to strike a deal with the developers. Hey, Mr. Developer, you also put in a portion of the capital required. Okay, and in return, we'll give you a higher revenue share. Okay, let's say the developers right now are taking 15% of the movie ticket ka revenue, okay, or whatever. In the future, they'll take a higher revenue take. Okay, so that's what they're trying to do. And plus, that is one model, capital light model. The other is they're also they're trying to do a franchise-owned company operated FOCO model as well. In that model, तो क्या है कि any franchise developer would put in all the capital. ये कुछ पैसा अपना नहीं डालेंगे PVR INOX, and in return they'll get a management fee. So these two new models, capital light models, they're trying to do for any new screen additions. Okay, and this is something I factored in my valuation as well. All right. Okay, and one thing more which is important for the capital section is they are relentlessly focused on reducing their debt. They plan to reduce their debt by 50% the next 12 to 18 months. Okay, all right. So this is an important point that we need to bake in. All right. And perhaps also, just make bake in our valuation if you really believe that this is something that may play out. Okay, all right. All right. So we're done with the capital requirement, capital efficiency section as well. As far as, so basically I've covered what my notes say here. So now let's move on to the cost and margin section. Okay. And this section, this framework of this notebook of mine tells me that I need to go to the investor presentation. Okay. So let me go over there. Okay. Right. So flipped over to the investor presentation. Okay. So look at these FY23 and FY24 numbers that I've marked. Okay. So see, there are essentially two cost components. One is variable cost or direct cost, and the other is fixed cost or indirect cost. Okay. So fixed cost consists of FHC, which is essentially the cost that they pay to movie producers. So it's 45-46%. Okay. So it's 45-46%. Okay. All right. And then cost of goods sold. This is the cost. This is in the F&B segment. Okay. So 25% is what they incur, okay, in F&B. Okay. So the F&B business operates at a gross margin of 75%. It's a higher margin business. Okay. All right. And of course, we'll know because, of course, all of us have paid exorbitant prices in theaters, in buying popcorn and Coke and what have you. All right. So ये तो variable cost हो गया, variable or direct cost हो गया. See, if the let's say if the theater is shut down, you don't incur these variable costs. You don't incur these variable costs. Okay. But let's say, regardless of the theater being operational or not, you would incur fixed or indirect cost. There is no escaping that. You would have to pay rent. You would have to pay common area maintenance. You'll have to pay your employees. You'll have to pay utilities. तो वो तो आपको देना ही पड़ेंगे. All right. Okay. So see what happened during COVID. Okay. The variable costs, of course, were down to like bare minimum or zero, but they had to pay these fixed costs. Okay. They had to pay these fixed costs. Okay. So, and the revenue, they were barely doing any revenue. So if this is a fixed cost, so the revenue kind of slipped over the cost and they were making losses. Okay. But let's say after COVID, now people have started coming back to the movie theaters. Okay? So revenue is slowly increasing. And if let's say if more people coming in, okay, as there is more consumption, as more appetite for consumption, more appetite for leisure among Indians. Okay? So slowly there'll be more people coming in the theaters to watch movies. So fixed cost more or less would remain the same as a percentage of revenue. Okay? But I should not say as a percentage of revenue, but let's say on a per screen basis, fixed cost more or less would stay the same. Okay? But as more and more people come in, so they'll get more and more revenue. Fixed costs more or less remaining the same. So kya hoga? They'll start making more margin. They'll start making more operating margin. Okay. So this is nothing but operating leverage. Okay. You are able to drive operating leverage because it's a high fixed cost business. Okay. Almost if it's almost at the same level, and you have more, you are able to scale. And if you are able to scale, you have it adds to the incremental revenue directly flows to your bottom line. Okay. And on the flip side, see, operating leverage is a double whammy. On the flip side, during COVID, as I said, what happened is when you don't have any people coming in, okay, so you have to pay those fixed costs. Okay. Now we're talking about operating deleverage. Okay. So you are actually making losses because वो fixed cost तो आपको देना ही है. So that's the double whammy. That's the other extreme of operating leverage, which is operating deleverage. Okay. All right. So this is something which is very important to understand in this business. Okay. All right. Okay. And now let me go to the next screen, next slide rather. So here they double click into the fixed cost. Okay. Here they have reported all these costs at the screen level. Okay. Per screen में what cost they incurred back in FY20, both for PVR and INOX together, and now how much fixed cost per screen they are incurring for PVR and INOX right now as of the latest financial year. So the message that they're trying to give is that their fixed costs have not increased as per inflation. It has, in fact, inflation has increased a lot, but their fixed cost per screen has not increased that much. It's it's below the increase is below inflation rate. That's the message that they're trying to drive, which is of course very commendable. Okay, and of course they are also getting benefit from the cost synergies that have taken place because of the merger with INOX. Okay, so that's what they're saying. And one thing very important is uh, is is to note the accounting treatment related to rent payments. Okay, all right. See, back in 2019, okay, so all the rent payments were expensed in the P&L. Okay? What it means is, कि जो भी आपको whatever rent payments, whatever leasing, whatever rent obligations that you have with the developers or with the mall owners, okay, those rent payments were expensed. They appeared as a line item, as a significant line item in the P&L, okay, and the income statement. Back in 2019, accounting rules related to rent payments they changed. Okay, accounting का कहना है, see, when a company takes loan from a bank, okay, then they are obligated to pay interest and principal payments to that bank. Because it's an obligation to pay the bank or whomsoever they have taken the loan from, that obligation appears as debt in the balance sheet. Similarly, okay, since this company or any company for that matter, if it has an obligation to make payments, in this case, the PVR INOX has obligation to pay rent payments, okay, to mall owners or developers, since they are obligated to make these rent payments over a period of time, okay, that obligation should appear as debt in the books of PVR, debt or lease liabilities. Okay, क्योंकि वो they have entered into a leasing contract with the movie developer, with the mall owners or developers. So वो जो liability है, it should appear as a lease liability or debt in the books of PVR. All right. So this 12,000 million of rent expense, okay, is actually not shown on the P&L. Rather, it becomes part of the lease liability in the balance sheet. Okay. So let me move over to the annual report and show you the notes to the financial statements. Jahan pe you have this lease liability, because this 12,000, as I said, is not a part of the P&L anymore. This is a part of the lease liability. So let me move over there and read it. All right. So I have the annual report up. Okay, so if you look at this lease liability, okay, so lease liability of 60,000 million or 6,000 CR. Okay, and then if you look at the notes, read through the notes, the leases are typically with the rental leases are typically with a non-cancelable lease term of 5 to 7 years, with an option to the company to extend lease term till 10-15 years. Okay? After the non-cancelable period, the group can exit from the property without any material financial obligations towards the developers or the lessors. All right. तो वो जो 12,000 है, all right. See so it's very important there to read the financial notes to the financial statements. I cannot stress on this enough. In fact, when we get to the valuation, before we begin with the valuation, which would be the next segment, okay, then I would show you कि how do I capture all these notes. Okay? So वो हम वहाँ cover करेंगे. Any which ways, see, a question comes कि 12,000 तो हमें दिखा रहा था rental expense, okay, but here you have 60,000. Okay, so let's just talk through. Let's just understand as to how do you have like 60,000 here. Okay, एक general sense बना लेते हैं कि why do you have 60,000 or 6,000 CR here, but rent payment is only 1,200 CR. Okay, let's understand how they came up with how they came up with this 60,000 million worth of lease liability. ठीक है? Lease liability, we saw the tenure of the lease liability typically is 5 to 7 years. All right, so lease liability is nothing but the present value of the future lease rental payments, okay, that they are required to make. Okay, so let's say they need to make lease rental payments over a 6-year period. We saw 5 to 7, तो 6 year ले लेते हैं, ठीक है? And we saw कि they need to make around 12,000 million or 12,000 CR worth of rent payment. Okay, all right. और द रेंट एस्केलेशन इज अराउंड 4% एवरी ईयर, ठीक है, ऑलराइट। तो एवरी ईयर कितना देना होगा फॉर द नेक्स्ट 6 years? लेट्स एस्टिमेट दैट, ठीक है। So over a 6 year term, okay, over a 6 year term, they would have made these payments. Overall, they would have made around 80 million or 8,000 CR worth of payment. ठीक है, अगर इसका टोटल करो, ठीक है। Now, I said lease liability is the present value. Lease liability, the balance sheet is the present value of all these future lease payments that they need to make. ठीक है, all right. And ठीक है, and if you see, I did not show you that note. Okay, that they discount these lease liabilities at 9.5%. इसका मतलब, see, whenever something appears as debt or as debt on the balance sheet, lease liability essentially is a debt. Okay? So whenever something appears as debt on the balance sheet, okay, you need to make interest payments on that. ठीक है, अभी मैं और समझाता हूं उसे, ओके। और इंटरेस्ट रेट जो है वो 9.5% है, ऑलराइट। Okay, that is also given in the notes to the financial statements. So if you discount the future lease payments at 9.5% interest rate, let's just do that. तो अगर मैं डिस्काउंट किया मैंने और इसको मैं ट्रैक कर दूं, ऑलराइट। सो टोटल वैल्यू क्या है, ये लीज लायबिलिटी, ये तो मेरे लीज रेंटल पेमेंट्स हैं और ये मेरा प्रेजेंट वैल्यू है। तो टोटल जो मेरा लीज लायबिलिटी है वो कितना, लीज लायबिलिटी इज द प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ all these lease rentals over the next 6 years. Okay? So it's around 58,000 million or around 5,800 CR, which is very close to the 60,000 number that we saw. 60,000 million या 6,000 CR number देखा था balance sheet, it's very close to that number. So this is how they estimate. They take the present value of the future lease payments. मैं मोटा मोटा आपको बता रहा हूं कैसे they estimate that. And I said, see, they pay interest on that. ये liability side में है, liability side of the balance sheet में है ये, okay? This number, all right, this lease liability is on the liability side of the balance sheet, okay? And they pay interest, they make interest payments on this at 9.5%. ये दिया हुआ है, as I said, ठीक है। इसका सिग्निफिकेंस है, मैं अभी आता हूं। अब लायबिलिटी आपने क्रिएट कर दी, सो यू नीड टू हैव इन द एसेट साइड ऑफ द बैलेंस शीट, you need to have something which counters lease liability. Okay, so what they do is, the accountants, what they've done is they create a right of use asset to counterbalance the lease liability on the asset side. ठीक है, ताकि बैलेंस हो जाए बैलेंस शीट, मोटा मोटा ऐसे समझो। तो क्योंकि आपने एक असेट क्रिएट किया है, सो यू नीड टू अमोर्टाइज और डेप्रिशिएट द एसेट एज वेल। ठीक है, तो थोड़ा कुछ अमोर्टाइजेशन आएगा एवरी ईयर, और लीज लायबिलिटी से यू वुड हैव सम इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स एज वेल एट 9.5% or whatever the interest rate is. All right. The sum of this amortization, of course, amortization and interest, both of these, ये तो बैलेंस शीट में appear करेगा. All right. And amortization and interest, they of course appear on the P&L statement. Okay. All right. And the sum of this amortization and interest payments, okay, in any given year is almost equal to the rent payment, is the rent payment that you need to make in a particular year. Okay, all right. तो बेसिकली हुआ क्या है कि अंडर द न्यू रूल्स ऑफ अकाउंटिंग, द रेंट पेमेंट क्या हुआ उस साल का क्या हुआ, इट हैज मूव टू, इट इज नाउ पार्ट ऑफ द अमोर्टाइजेशन एंड द इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स. ओके, ऑलराइट. ओके, एंड सी, accounting basis mein this treatment makes sense because see why this was done is because let's say any retailer, or they shut shop, let's say after 2 years, okay, they've made only 2 years worth of these rental payments and they shut shop in the third year. Okay, see, they're still obligated, although they have gone out of business, but they're still obligated to make these lease rental payments, right? They can't run away with it, although they've shut shop. Okay, so they're obligated to pay. That's why it's important. So accountants thought this is important to represent this as a liability. ओके, ऑलराइट. तो फ्यूचर को रेंटल पेमेंट्स को डिस्काउंट करके यू गेट द लीज लायबिलिटी, उस पे आप इंटरेस्ट कंपोनेंट होता है, ओके, एंड देन यू क्रिएट अ काउंटर एसेट इन द एसेट साइड, उस पे उसको अमोर्टाइज करते हो, एंड द सम ऑफ अमोर्टाइजेशन इंटरेस्ट इज एक्चुअली द रेंटल पेमेंट इन अ पर्टिकुलर ईयर. ठीक है, विच वुड बी क्लोज टू 12,000 इन ईयर 1. ओके, fact, I had written a blog on this subject 4 years ago. Okay? So the reason why I'm bringing this up again is if you read through this statement, okay, under the new leasing method and the finance leases, rent expense is broken into amortization of the ROU asset and the interest expense on the lease liability, which is what I was trying to explain just now, right? Okay. तो अब इसे I flipped over to the investor presentation और उसमें the way they report their P&L. Okay. So this view ना ये वाला, this is actually what is reported to the street as per the accounting, as per whatever the accounting is. Yeah? And this, on the other hand, yeah, is after you have removed the accounting adjustments. ये वाला, ठीक है? All right. See, so if you see without the accounting adjustments, like अगर पुराने तरीके से report करो, which is this one, yeah, you would see the rent expenses are actually embedded within the expense line item. As a rent line item, they are embedded here. Okay. All right. That's why but if you see in the new form of reporting, okay, rent expenses of 12,000 million are no longer a part of this expense. Okay. All right. In fact, as we saw, till now, they of course are part of the balance sheet. Okay. But in the P&L, they are a part of depreciation and amortization and finance cost. Okay. All right. In the new form of accounting, in the old form of accounting, which is this one, okay, you see rent is higher, but depreciation, amortization, and finance costs are lower. Okay, because rental payments इसमें नहीं embedded है यहाँ पे. In the new form of accounting, rental payments are embedded within amortization and finance cost. Okay, so what happens is, yeah, in the new form of accounting, since expense में you don't have rental payments embedded, okay, anymore. Okay, so EBITDA level pay you look more profitable. Okay, but after from EBITDA you remove depreciation, you remove finance cost from a profit before tax and profit after tax perspective. Okay, that this and this, okay, you look less profitable. All right, but in the old form of accounting, after removing these new accounting adjustments, in the EBITDA level you look less profitable. Okay, you look less profitable because you have this bulky rent expense embedded within the expense line item. Okay, so you look less profitable. Okay, all right, but you look more profitable from profit before tax when you go down. You look slightly more profitable. Okay, all right. So this is just accounting. All right. So my advice to you would be, as an investor, we should look at this, this method, Purana method, basically after removing these accounting adjustments. Okay, because the reason why I'm saying that you should, that's just this is just an advice. Okay, because it just becomes easier because you know कि आपके actual rent payments क्या हैं यहाँ पे expense statement के अंदर embedded हैं, लेकिन वो split करते हैं. Okay, यहाँ पे जैसे split किया हुआ है. See, they have कहाँ पे गया? See, they have made this split here. ठीक है? ये 12,000 यहाँ पे embedded है. Okay, so it just becomes easier to understand instead of you trying to understand कि कैसे split हैं across, कैसे spread हैं across depreciation and finance. Okay, so anyway, I thought this is important because a lot of people struggle to kind of understand, financial statements with this new form of accounting. So it's important that we understand what has happened and how do you really interpret from an investor lens, interpret these financial statements from an investor lens. All right. All right. Okay. See, so we've done with cost, margin, and discussing the operating lease adjustments as well. Okay. All right. So now let's try to assess the moat in this business based upon what we have seen until now. Okay. All right. So let's try to do that. Let me just increase the. Okay. See, to assess the moat in the business, okay, you could use any framework, but I like to use Porter's 5 forces. Okay. The first one of them is trying to judge the competitive rivalry. Okay. So if you look at the market share, if you look at the box office market share, the footfall market share, screen market share, of course, they are leaders in the industry, okay, which you've already seen. Okay. All right. And plus, the single screens are declining across the length and breadth of the country. Okay? And moreover, they're now focusing on expanding in the southern region of India, which has a higher proportion of single screens, of course, and many of those single screens may go out of business, so they may be able to establish a strong foothold in that market. All right, so I certainly think that they are pretty good here. Okay? So if you see my assessment, okay, so I think the rivalry here is low. Okay, if I look at this aspect, okay, then if I move down, if I look at the supplier power, okay, so we talk about the supplier power. See, this is I've marked in red because this is one area where I think see supply essentially talking about the movies, right? They don't have any control over quality at all. They really don't have any control. Okay? So if the quality of the movies would not be good, then people, of course, would not flock to, in the theaters to watch movies, right? Yeah. So as per my assessment, of course, they don't have any supplier power. Okay, so suppliers have high power, they don't have any supplier power, is all I'm saying. Now, if you move to the buyer power, okay, the power which is in the hand of their customers. Okay, so what I think, based on what we've seen is, okay, we saw that they have been able to say increase the food and beverage prices. They have been able to increase the average ticket prices. Okay? See, so if they do so, we as customers, though we don't have a lot of say, right? If we like a movie, we'll still go and watch it, right? But yes, if they, let's say, increase it beyond a point, then I, as a consumer, may would want to like just wait, for the movies to hit the OTT, or if they, let's say, exorbitantly price the food and beverage, which are exorbitantly priced any which ways. If they, let's say, decide to increase the prices further, let's say beyond the inflation rate, then I, as a consumer, may not really buy the food and beverage in the theaters. Okay, all right. Any which ways, I've rated the medium here. Okay, and then moving on, threat of new entrants. Okay? See, I don't think any. See, certainly no single screens should come up because the fixed costs, the cost economics in this business would make the single screen businesses, not economically viable to run. That's the reason why many of them are shutting down. Okay? And in terms of bigger like Carnival, okay, so they, of course, they have targets to increase the screen share. Okay? But still they are small if we compare it to PVR. Okay? So I think there is low threat of new entrants. Okay? Right? Threat of substitution. See, I would say I'm reading the medium here, okay, because see, there is definitely the threat of OTT. Okay, all right, and plus, let's say if the theatrical window right on theatrical window for South Indian movies is only 4 weeks as opposed to 8 weeks for Hindi movies. Okay, so of course, and they are focusing down south. Okay? So, but still, this is certainly a key risk. Both because if you have like small theatrical windows, people just might wait for the movies, and it's happening right now. But again, that is one risk which may continue to play out and may intensify if the theatrical windows, they are not increased, or they are not aligned across the different language movies that we have in India. Okay, right. So, and any cost advantage, see, I think they are ferociously focused on cost. Okay, they have shown that they, if you see, fixed cost has not, the screen level has not increased at the inflation rate. So they are actually doing a pretty good job at trying to keep the costs under wraps. And if they are able to successfully do so, then of course they'll have operating leverage playing out, which we discussed a little while back. Okay, all right. And so this is what I wanted to discuss. So if I were to summarize, see, I know we haven't really looked at the management quality and the valuation yet, but if I were to summarize based on what we know until, so plenty of things, playing out for this company. So I believe there are certain moats given the other leaders. Okay, and of course, scale is an advantage in this business. It's a high fixed cost business. All right, and because of the scale, they are able to favorably negotiate with the with the movie mall owners and developers, right? So that is the benefit of scale that they get, okay? Because they are the industry leaders, all right? All right. So this is certainly a moat, if I were to summarize, because they are the, okay, and plus they have a very good focus on the costs, on keeping the cost under wraps. Okay. All right. So again, all right. So I think this is the end of our like first segment. Okay. Now we have two things to. So we have, of course, we need to look at the management quality assessment. We need to assess the quality of the management, and of course, we need to look at the valuation. And when we get to the valuation, we'll of course use many of these inputs that we saw relating to market size. We've already estimated the revenue both top down and bottom up. So we'll plug all of that in our valuation. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.